Hey, it's Moser. This is going to be really fast. It's the Evo1.3 speciation and gene flow level 3 recitation. This is, of course, me, Moser. So, this is the question we're not doing on this one. It is from the biology practice test number 23. If you did do it, that's okay. I'll give you 2 points for it. But it actually goes 2 matrices from now. So you'll see this question again when we've talked about some of the terms that are in this one. So now, let's look at this. This is Biology Spring 16 released items. From an evolutionary perspective, what is the significance of reproductive isolation developing between two populations within a species? Speciation due to reproductive isolation results in the extinction of ancestral species. So let's think about our pythons. So we've got the pythons back in Myanmar. We have pythons that are in Florida. They can't reproduce together. Does the fact that those pythons are living and reproducing in Florida make the ones in Myanmar go extinct? No! That's ridiculous. When two populations cannot interbreed, and of course that's what reproductive isolation means, the flow of genetic information between them stops. Well, that's a true statement, but I want to read everything else before I pick it. Over time, reproductive isolation leads to increasing competition between the populations. Just because they can't breed, they're now going to compete? No, that's ridiculous. When the size of the breeding population decreases, the mutation rate decreases, resulting in greater fitness. So, does changing the size of the breeding population change the mutation rate? No, absolutely not. So B is the correct answer. Okay. This is Biology Spring 16, number 28, and it's a question that involves Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. You might remember that this was one of our vocabulary words, and then I basically never mentioned it again. That is bad educational practice, I'm going to be honest with you. There's not a lot on Hardy-Weinberg in the state standards or on the test, but it's something that I just want you to have heard of. So we do it as a vocabulary word. We'll talk about it here. It pops up on the test every couple of years. So what we're told is that a scientist studies a population of lizards to determine whether or not the population is evolving. Right there, that's a clue and a reminder to you about what Hardy-Weinberg means. Check the conditions that would cause the population to be in Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. Now, remember that Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium is when a population is not evolving. So in your head, when you read that, I want you to say, oh, click the conditions that would cause the population to not evolve. Cool. Mating is random. Well, yes, because if mates are selecting other mates, they're probably doing so for a reason, and that means sexual selection can cause the population to evolve, can cause gene frequencies to change. The lizard population is small. Well, we remember from our genetic drift simulator that in small populations, allele frequencies can change just for no reason, just on accident. And of course, changing allele frequencies are exactly the definition of evolution. So small populations tend to continue to evolve. We wouldn't check that box because we want conditions that would stop the population from evolving. No lizards migrate in or out of the population. Right. If lizards come in or out of the population, they bring their genes with them or take their genes with them. That's going to change gene frequencies. So no migration means no evolution. A new mutation occurs within the population. So if we are talking about conditions that would allow allele frequencies to remain constant, having a new mutation presents a new allele that would change allele frequencies. We don't want that one. Natural selection is not occurring in the population. Yeah, because if natural selection is happening, then the population might be evolving. Allele frequencies might be changing. We want conditions that would be necessary for the population to not evolve. Now, the second part of this, move the correct word or phrase into the blank boxes to describe what happens when Hardy-Weinberg conditions are met. If I wrote this question, I'd throw it out. I think it's badly worded. So, allele frequencies blank will blank over time. So allele frequencies for an individual. Well, we can't have allele frequencies in an individual because they're only measured in a population. Allele frequencies in a population. Okay, well that makes sense. In a population. will change or remain constant. We know that Hardy-Weinberg means equilibrium, genetic equilibrium. Allele frequencies are not changing. So, of course, allele frequencies would remain constant. Okay. This question should look kind of familiar to you because I basically ripped off the premise for the tiger beetles. Map shows the geographic distribution of salamander populations that descended from a common ancestor, E. oregonus. Over millions of years, the salamanders moved south from what is now Oregon and Northern California, that's your founding population, down areas both east and west of the Central Valley. They were separated by a large lake and later the unsuitable habitat of the Central Valley itself. Because of this geographic barrier, gene flow among some of these populations is limited and in some cases has led to reproductive isolation. Based on salamander distribution data shown on the map, choose two salamander populations between which gene flow can occur. So here's what you want to do. Zoom into that picture. Remember that gene flow can only happen if their ranges overlap. So no salamanders can cross the Central Valley. That is death to salamanders. So we can just forget about that. What that means is we're looking for salamanders whose ranges, territories overlap. Well, L and N have some overlap. So L and N is one possible correct answer, but it's not the only one. M and O have overlap. So M and O are a possible correct answer. P and O also have overlap. So P and O would be a possible answer. The ones that absolutely cannot possibly ever have gene flow would be ones like N and P, they're separated by the valley, L and M, L and O, they can't ever get across the valley. Now we're looking at the same salamander species, the same map, and we're asked which two salamander subpopulations would be least likely to reproduce successfully if brought together. Well, they're more likely to reproduce successfully if their common ancestor is more recent. So if we look here, here's that founding population. L and M have a fairly recent common ancestor. They could probably successfully reproduce. We want the ones that would be least likely, so it's not them. L and N, well, L and N are on the same side of the valley. Their ranges overlap. It's possible that they already have gene flow, so they're not the least likely to be able to reproduce. That one's bogus. P and N, aha. So P's range is on this side of the valley. N's range is on that side of the valley, P on this, and their common ancestor is millions of years in the past, so it's unlikely these guys could successfully reproduce. P and O, of course, probably already do successfully reproduce because their ranges overlap. That means the correct answer is C. Okay, last two questions. Two subspecies of tufted ear squirrels have been observed near the Grand Canyon. Scientists believe that these two squirrels evolved from a common population of squirrels that lived in the ponderosa pine forests that once grew in what is now the Grand Canyon. The Kaibab squirrel is found on the north side of the canyon, and Abert squirrel is found on the south side. Which statement explains the formation of the two subspecies from the original population? Similar selective pressures on each side of the canyon caused fur color mutations to occur in the new populations. Hold it. Does selective pressure cause mutations? No. And even if it did, would similar pressures cause them to end up being different colors? No. That's ridiculous, totally bogus, not falling for it. As the canyon formed and the ponderosa pine forest disappeared, the original population was split into two isolated populations. Well, that's a very possible explanation for having two different looking squirrels north and south of the canyon. I'm going to put a dot by that and read the rest and come back. The original population was able to find similar habitats in many small pockets of connected forests remaining around the Grand Canyon. Well, if they were in similar habitats and the pockets of forests were connected, that would mean they would have gene flow. They'd be unlikely to evolve to look so different. Bogus! Natural land bridges connecting the two sides of the canyon allowed gene flow to occur between the populations after the ponderosa pine forest disappeared. Well, no, if they had gene flow, they wouldn't start evolving separately. They'd continue to look similar. bogus. So in fact, yes, the correct answer is B. And by the way, just because I can, let me show you what an Abert's squirrel really looks like. Is that not adorable? I think they're just so cool. Okay, last question. Researchers studying hummingbirds in the Andes Mountains of Ecuador made several observations. 1, there are many species of hummingbirds. 2, the species are not separated by any physical barrier. And 3, unique hummingbird species are found at different elevations in the Andes. Which hypothesis is based on these observations? Conditions at each elevation favor different hummingbird traits. Well, that's a statement that certainly could explain what we're seeing. Let's put a dot by it, read the rest, and come back. All hummingbird species are able to interbreed at every elevation. Well, if they were able to interbreed up and down the mountains at every elevation, they wouldn't end up looking different because we wouldn't have any kind of isolation. Sounds bogus to me. Elevation changes cause hummingbirds to develop new methods of transportation. I think this is the funniest one. Are they running now? Are they tunneling? Are they driving the bus? I don't know what that's got to do with it. Individual hummingbirds choose food sources based on their preferences for specific plants. That's something that is really, it could be a true statement, okay? But does it explain the many species of hummingbirds at different elevations? It doesn't. So the answer here is A. And again, because I can, there is a tremendous variety of hummingbirds from places like the Andes that come up into the United States to spend part of their year. And if you ever get a chance to go to Arizona and see all the hummingbirds, you should totally do it. Okay, screenshot this, and you can screenshot this in the Ed puzzle. Make sure time and date are visible. Turn this in on the 3C turn in, and hey, be good, work hard. I'll see you on soon.